for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away. Like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. The ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
And there he is, Master Bruce Paix. Welcome aboard. And we had someone in early already on Rumble, one of the Rumbles, not sure if it's mine, but it could be the Cafe Lockdown, as Pickle Mix. Where are you streaming in from? Pickle Mix? Australia. We've got cooled down a bit here in South Australia where I am, although we did have some very warm temperatures, and I believe as did you over there in Victoria, Bruce. And has it cooled down for you a little bit over there?
Yeah, it's been high 20s, low 30s for the last week. And I am going to discuss the temperatures because there's a question about whether last week's record temperatures are actually records.
Yes, we always bring this great stuff up, don't we? And I actually posted something on social media the other day about temperatures and in the 1800s, but I better not bring that up until you come up, because I might gazump you, and I don't want to get a gazump strike this early in the show. Yeah, we're only a minute and 38 into the show, and I don't really want to be getting a gazump strike. So there you go. And love the awakening. Where we go. Love the awakening. 44 to 46 for the past week or more. Where I don't know. Let us know where you're streaming in from. I love the awakening. We'll see where you're at. And East Coast of the United States. Good to see you, Pickle Mix, from the East Coast of the United States. Yes, it would be very cold over there, I guess. Very cold. And what do we got here? No green here, all brown and cooked. Yeah. And then Valerie's there. G'day, Valerie. Normally, in the past, was streaming in from both Facebook and X, but seeing that I'm not streaming on X now, I'm loathed to pay the money that they want me to pay. I might end up doing it again. I don't know. Yeah, still verdicts.
Why pay? You're the content creator here, aren't you?
Well, still verdicts out about, I'm just not sure about old Elon, but, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, isn't it? It's hard to tell.
Yep. Some good, some bad.
Yep. Yeah, it's a bit of both. And you just got to weigh it all up, haven't you? So, anyway, mate, there's not a lot for me. As I said, a bit doughy today, and I've not finished work only about 10 minutes ago and jump on and that. So I haven't prepared a lot, which is good because, you're obviously happy to hear that when I don't have a lot to waffle on with. 12 degrees. Hoo-hee.
Fahrenheit.
That's not Celsius either. There you go. So nice and cool. Yeah, you're right, Phil. They should be paying the creators. Exactly right. Yep. No, exactly right. Bringing all the content to them. But there's a certain amount of accounts that actually get, a really good, they get smashed. And look, it really just depends on the individual, whether someone resonates with anybody and that. But as I've said for ages, I had about 5,500 people following me on X, and for the last 6 months at least, there was only about 40 people seeing my stuff. So what's the point? And whereas at the moment, there's a lot more traction on the other channel. So, and I've decided to start streaming to my YouTube channel, my Faith Culture Politics. So we'll see how that goes, and we go from there. So, and that hot as hell in Perth, Joanne. Good on you. Good to see you over there in Perth. Belinda and Belinda's there. Afternoon, Bruce and Mark. Good to see you. Nice to see that all the streams that I am streaming on are working. Now, Bruce, as I said, I'm not going to cover a lot, and I'm going to let you get into the show a bit earlier. But I did want to cover, obviously, something that you and I talked about just before the show, and just in case people haven't been aware. I mean, it's been a little while now. Everybody should be aware that the Epstein, another tranche of Epstein files have been put out there. So I just wanted to run through with people how they can do their own due diligence and research and do their own investigations. I'm not going to talk into it a great deal, but just going to share this page real quickly. So this is the Epstein Library on the US Department of Justice site. So the actual web address for that is justice.gov/Epstein. And this is where people can go and look at for themselves. Now, what I've done a couple of times, so it asks you if you're 18 or above when you jump in there. But yesterday I just typed in Australia, but because I live in South Australia, I just searched South Australia. So if you go and then you press search, and it starts loading a whole heap of data sets and lots of documents. So this is, if you can see that now, this is showing 1 to 10 of 196 results for South Australia. Now, a lot of it's just, bits and pieces, doesn't make a lot of sense, and this is sort of part of an investigatory kind of thing. And again, showing you this, there's no accusations of anybody or anybody in particular do anything wrong. You've got to do your own research and investigations. This is just information there, but a lot of reference to South Australia. There's a lot of information in there. A lot of it relates to Kadena and a particular member of Parliament in South Australia. But as I said, if you search South Australia, Just Australia, there's a lot of information there. So these are all the different data sets, and you can click on any one of those individually. You've got a whole heap of them. This is page 2. You can see Department of Families and Communities. This is why I'm not going to go through a whole heap of stuff, but here in South Australia, this person comes up a lot. John Wayne Olsen, Centre for South Australia, talks a lot about targeted victim and being involved in that. But if you click on the PDF, it then opens up a whole heap of stuff with stuff written on. Again, you can read through all of this yourself. It's all there, but obviously there's a reference to the Liberal Party, which is Olsen there. So Olsen, New York, Epstein, this has been handwritten. So look, and again, this is not for me to say anything and anybody's wrong, but this is just for me, for people to see that you can access this information yourself. It's fully publicly available. What it leads to, what it talks about, what it discovers is anybody's guess. And I'm not going to presume any of that, but this is just for you guys to do your own research. So that's on the Epstein Library, US Department of Justice at justice.gov/Epstein. You type in, are you 18 years old? Yes, you're verified. Then you've got an option there to put in the search box anything. You can search for a name or anything that you want to, and do your own due diligence and research from there. So just wanted to cover that for people, Bruce, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of sleuths. If they have got time, they can go through that, put things together. A lot of it doesn't really make sense in its current format. I'm sure we'll have a lot of people explaining what it is about. It looks to me initially that there are investigatory notes from people alleging crimes committed, alleging criminal activity for people in South Australia or Australia, and not saying in any way, shape or form that there is evidence of criminal wrongdoing by showing people that stuff.
Yep.
There you go. So that's that. And yeah, so not much more. I could have brought a lot much more, but yeah, as I said, I've been under the bit under the pump, and I'll let you get onto the show and might have an early one, depending on how much content you got for us today and how much banter we have going through the show today, buddy.
We always seem to get 2 hours. Let's do this thing and see what we get.
Let's go, brother. Let's go.
Okay, here's the contents list for this week. So starting with the update section, you might remember last week we talked about the menu at Davos, which was for the wise rulers, not for the little people. And in fact, at that very Davos meeting that they discussed encouraging us little people to eat less meat and more bug meat, which of course brings back the slide about hypocrites. What was that? What was the definition of a hypocrite again?
Oh, you got me. My mind's not sharp today, mate. So
a person who says one thing and does another, basically. We've got more updates on the Australia Day Awards, and Australia's third non-spacefaring astronaut was honoured. And there's been a lot of people basically saying the same thing as I said, which is, well, hang on, what about the others? And since when you're an astronaut when you haven't been into space? Well, Sky News picked that up and said that was really unfair criticism. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, good one.
The poor old Bondi hate speech, or as I like to call them, censorship laws, are not looking too good already, because it appears that the first victim of that is going to be a Jewish influencer who said that they think Islam is a danger to Israel and the world, probably defensible. So they've had their visa pulled and they're not allowed to come to Australia because of that. So looks to me like the blasphemy laws are in place already.
Yeah, wow.
Not easy being Greens. We're going to discuss last week's record heat wave. Was it or wasn't? Short answer, no, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit in the health category this week with a report that the most common cancer of children, leukemia, has risen 30% in recent times. And we might just speculate on why that form of immune failure appeared to have occurred. Finance. So tomorrow the RBA is meeting to decide on the price that you and I pay for our mortgages. You thought that was a private arrangement between you and the bank. No, the RBA gets to set the price, or as I like to say, fix the price of borrowing money. Not allowed to fix the price of anything else, I might add, but the most important price in the economy, the price of money, they're going to fix, and it seems likely that they'll raise that. And they're doing that to address cost of living pressures. So assume I'm an idiot, Mark, and just tell me, how does putting my mortgage payment up help me deal with cost of living pressures?
Oh, mate, it makes no sense to me. I don't know. Maybe I need a degree. Maybe I need a college degree for that.
Assume I'm an idiot and explain it to me, because it doesn't make sense to me either.
Acknowledge that I'm an idiot and explain it to me. That would be helpful.
What else do we? Hang on. Did I see Carla's here?
Carla's in the house. Hello, Carla.
There we go. Do we need to start?
Barley's watching. That's okay. Barley's watching. Good to see.
Barley's, of course, 12 minutes behind us in the time clock.
Oh, ouch. Good on you. Waiting for the comeback.
What else have we got? We've got a bit of diversity is strength, including, apparently not in Sweden. They don't appear to have benefited from that. Diversity doesn't appear to give us interesting foods, unlike what SA Premier Malinauskas thought, because probably the diverse citizens of Italy think pork needs to be off the menu. So there goes all that delicious prosciutto from Italy.
Yep.
And closer to home, we had another diversity strength story where apparently one of the Bondi shooting victims, who was being treated in a Western Sydney hospital, had to be treated under an assumed name. Now, the hospital said that was to keep the media away, but the patient herself said that she thought it was to keep the staff away. She didn't feel safe from the staff. And you might remember that recent incident where the two nurses from a different Western Sydney hospital said that they would the Jewish patients when they came in. Haven't heard an update on that for a while. Presumably both of those nurses have had their registrations cancelled.
Yeah, well, I mean, they didn't take much for them to have to ban Candace Owens, did it, Bruce?
Well, yeah, more hate speech, of course. And finally, in the Mythbusters segment, news this week that they want to give dedicated time in school for kids to slip, slop, slap, put their sunblock on. And the reason for that is because, as we all know, that if you get exposed to the sun, you'll die very rapidly from cancer. Well, again, because given it's a Mythbusters segment, I'm going to just ask, well, is that true? What's the evidence for it? So that's That's where we're going this week, Carla.
There you go. Yep. And Carla was saying that they had a monsoon season. They had a mini hurricane, and she was cleaning up from that. Apparently, she said, "Cut her some slack. 12 minutes. Come on, Bruce."
Cut. Yep. No worries. No worries. You got to cheat.
Yeah. And Trish, I've decided I can't stream on X at the moment, Trish, because I'm not paying the money that X wants me to pay to have a blue mark. Now, people will say, well, Mark, why are you doing it with Facebook? Well, at the moment, I'm actually getting, because I've got quite a few followers on Facebook, I'm getting a little bit of monetization from Facebook, which is actually paying for the blue check mark on Facebook. So it's actually more beneficial for me on Facebook. X wants hundreds of dollars by the time you convert it to Australian dollars to have that sort of facility, and I've chosen not to for now. I don't know whether that changed down the track, but currently we're streaming on Facebook. We're on two Rumble channels and plus my YouTube, so it is getting out there. But that's the reason, Trish, I'm not currently streaming on X.
Yep. And as we said, content creators should be getting paid, not charged.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There you go. So that's the reason.
All right, back to the updates. So first update, you might remember last week we discussed the pretty special menu that the wise world leaders were eating at Davos. The gourmet food and the private jets and all that. But apparently whilst they were eating their organic grass-fed beef, they were also plotting to stop us plebs from doing it, because the WEF at Davos said, and I'll quote, "The World Economic Forum is calling for a cultural revolution to increase acceptance of lab-grown meat despite public resistance to the products." So they want to force us to eat fake meat, same as they want to force us to do all sorts of other things that we don't want to do. So who gave these people the power?
Well, they did themselves, Bruce, but as you know, you and I, we've talked about this before, and lots of people know, is that they're unelected bureaucrats who've sort of somehow amassed lots of power, but enough power for our governments and our leaders to take note of what they're doing, to almost have policy influenced by these people. So, yes, very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful with the rise of One Nation. I haven't specifically looked at their policy on world anything bodies, but I'd be surprised if Pauline's party was going to keep us signed up to any of those BS international treaties which don't benefit us.
No, they've openly stated that they want to exit those platforms.
Yeah, great. FAB.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that was the WEF. Update on this story from last week, where we discussed the apparently odd situation where Australia's first, actually third, astronaut, and one who hasn't actually astronauted, hasn't been to space, received a very high Australia Day honour, Australian of the Year, when the two Australian men who had actually been to space before her, Andy Thomas and, can't remember Paul Scully Power, were apparently invisible to history. And it seems that I wasn't the only person who went, hang on, because here's Sky News reporting on the general tone of criticism from other members. And here's an example. One commenter on the story said, "I'm sorry if this offends, but the Australian of the Year is an astronaut who has not actually been to space. What's the go? What are we doing here?" one asked. So that was a typical comment in response to the news that the Australian of the Year was a non-astronauting astronaut. Now, following that, Sky News jumped aboard and defended her. A bit of white knighting here from Sky News. And Sky News said it was a gross suggestion. So to ask the question, well, how do you get a gong for astronauting if you haven't astronauted? That's a gross suggestion. You're not allowed to make that. So they haven't answered the question, of course. They've just attacked the person raising it. So in in argument terms, that's called an ad hominem. You're attacking the person making the argument rather than the argument. It also said that the comments were unhinged chatter, and that the recipient is a literal astronaut. That's what Sky News said. Sky News, no, she's not a literal astronaut. And even if she wasn't Australia's first literal astronaut. At most, she is, if she becomes one, at most she will be Australia's third astronaut. So she's not a literal astronaut at all. And abusing your viewers who raised the very real question as to, well, hang on, is not a good look for a news organisation. And if Sky News wants to argue the point, they don't have to argue with me. They have to argue with NASA. Because here's taken from the NASA homepage, and I've got a link up there. Here's a definition of what an astronaut is according to NASA. The term astronaut derives from the Greek words meaning star sailor and refers to all who have been launched as crew members aboard NASA spacecraft bound for orbit and beyond. So they have been launched as crew members. So they have to have gone on the rocket, and they can't just be passengers like Katy Perry. And we discussed that last week.
Yeah. So she's
Sorry,
only done simulation stuff.
Sorry, Sky News, you are wrong about this, and abusing people who ask the question without doing your homework doesn't make you look good on this occasion.
Yeah, no, exactly right. It's a bit funny that they would, go into bat for that, and they're like, it's a bit that maybe they'll come after us now, Bruce, and so like, we're getting pretty popular out in the podcasting world. Maybe Sky News will say, that Bruce Paix on there, hassling her for being the third. It's just not right. Yeah, correct. And I've noticed Belinda's comment here. Been feeding the furry people and forgot to share. I took the trouble to get the feeding done before I sat down to avoid any sort of acoustic interference later on. Yeah, I actually like it when your horses whinny through the window, Bruce. I think it's quite cute, to be honest. I don't mind it. It's like gives me a little chuckle. And Lyanda's been busy, and good on you, Lyanda. I love the idea that people are making their own bread. This is just bloody awesome. So I've missed much, been making my own bread and cooking a cake. So good on for your workmates. Good on you, Lyanda. Awesome stuff.
Right. All right, more updates. So this is a Bondi fallout update. And here they've quoted two unlikely people that I agree with both of. So at the top, they've quoted ex-Prime Minister Morrison. And what he said about Bondi was, we need to confront extremists and social fragility. And I agree. It's just after COVID, I didn't expect to be agreeing with him, because he certainly acted as an extremist during COVID and divided society. So, but he's right about this. In regard to Islamic terror attacks, yes, the problem is extremists and the problem is social fragility, a divided society. All right. Now, in a related story, an imam responded that we need to stop saying radical and extremist. And I agree with that as well, because as discussed before, the Bondi attackers were not radicals, they were devout. And I've shown you the parts of the Quran that support exactly what they did. They were just following instructions according to the book. Yes. So here we go. I agree with both Scott Morrison and an Islamic cleric at the same time on the same day. How about that?
That's pretty amazing there. What the heck, Bruce? Miracles never cease. Miracles never cease.
Now, let me ask you that. And I ask this seriously, and I'm going to tick into this a little bit later when I compare Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. We know that miracles are a feature of Christianity. Are they a feature of Islam and Judaism as well. Do you know?
No, not that I'm aware of, but then I'm happy to be proven wrong as well, though.
Interesting question, I think.
Very. I'm pretty sure that you'll unpack that in due course, my friend.
Not today, I won't. I haven't gone into that. That's just occurred to me. But
Yeah.
back to our two spokesmen here, the Imam and Scott Morrison. So Islamic leaders immediately came out and condemned what Morrison had said, which is that we need to address extremists and social division. Nevertheless, the Islamic commentators said that Morrison's words were reckless and divisive. And I fear that our new hate speech laws are really just going to turn into heresy laws, where you can't criticise a religion, any religion, because it's a religion. And we saw that in the lead up to this when they were talking about what the hate speech laws would attempt to criminalise. The imams immediately came out and said, well, we have to be allowed to quote what it says in the book. So you're not allowed to criticise what it says in the book. And by the way, that's what it says in the book. It says that the Quran is the perfect word of God as related through the Prophet Muhammad, and nothing in it can be questioned. It all has to be taken as, might be mixing my metaphors, all has to be taken as gospel. So I do fear that the only thing we're going to get out of the hate speech laws is effectively they'll be used as heresy laws, and they'll in particular be used as heresy laws to prevent us criticising Islam, as is indicated by what the imams have said.
Yep.
Now, I noted in that picture of Scott Morrison that he is wearing a Jewish religious head covering, also known as a kippah or a yarmulke. So I thought, he's not Jewish as far as I know. So what is the significance of that? So I did a little bit of digging into that, and here's what I came up with. So the kippah, that little brimless hat that sits rather precariously on the head of Jews at times, is a traditional head covering worn by Jews to remind them that God is watching. Now, I put traditional with a star beside it because I make the point that this is a tradition. There is nothing in the Torah, the Jewish religious document, that mandates this. So the wearing of this has come after that. It's not an instruction in their book, but it's been tradition for a long time to cover your head as a acknowledgement that God is above you and watching you. And you might see with the Orthodox Jews, they've always got a black hat on and the plaited beards. So that's a thing in Judaism. Now, the kippah is most commonly worn during prayer. Obviously, you're signifying closeness to God at that time. But it can be worn routinely, as can other head coverings, as I just said. And point 3 here is the most important point, I think, in this setting. The kippah may be worn by non-Jews as a sign of respect when in a synagogue or at a memorial, a funeral, etc. So I'm assuming that's what this signifies here. This is a sign of respect, a bit like taking your shoes off if you go into a mosque. That's what you do. So if ever you're wondering why at times and non-Jewish religious leaders are wearing kippahs, I think that's the reason. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there you go.
Note also in part 1, the Jews wear this to remind them that God is watching over them. And that raised a question for me. And how would you answer this, Mark? Do Christians, Muslims and Jews all worship the same God?
Well, this is a very, very interesting point. This is a very interesting question.
Same word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've done some research on it. So what would you say in answer to that?
I would say no.
Well, you're wrong, mate. The research that I did, which included the opinions of multi-faith religious scholars, said that basically, yes, the Jewish God is the same as the Islamic God, is the same as the Christian God. But there are differences. Whilst the God is the same, there are differences in the ranks or roles that are ascribed to many of the other actors in the play. So as far as I know, Christianity regards Jesus as the Son of God, but Islam does not, and Judaism does not. They agree that Jesus was there and existed, but said, no, he was a prophet, but he was not the Son of God. So that's a major difference there. And obviously,
the big thing is though is that Jesus come down, or Jesus is God in the flesh. So there's a big difference there as well.
Yeah, and the Trinity and all that. And as soon as my Bible arrives, I'll be able to start boning up on that as well, won't I, Mark?
You will. Only a few days away, brother.
You've said it's in the post.
It's taken a little bit.
I'll keep my promise. I'll spend, by the end of the year, I'll have read that. Now, am I allowed to write notes in it like I did with the Quran, or is that a blasphemy thing?
It is yours, absolutely. It is. It just means that it's well used, and lots of people, if you're doing it right, write notes in there. Absolutely.
See, as I understand it, I could be put to death for writing in the Quran here. See, I took lots of notes. Right?
Well,
as I understand it, that's blasphemy. That's a big no-no. You're not allowed to do that. And in the modern world, I used to have a question which I have actually mischievously asked religious figures. So if damaging or defacing a Quran is a sin, and Muslims regard it as so, if I download an electronic copy of it and then delete it, is that also a sin?
That's a good question, mate. Well, yeah, of course you would go there. I mean, that's a very good question, though, isn't it? In this digital age, is it the same thing? I
don't think I've had a very good answer to that, I'm afraid.
No, you're likely not to get one. But anyway,
in reference to this question, do Christians, Muslims, and Jews all worship the same God? Yeah, pretty much they do, believe it or not. Having said that, there are clearly major differences in how people express that belief and how they interpret that belief as their interactions with others. Islam, for example, I would say is far more militant in their expression of belief than the other two religions. All righties. And as I said, the early signs are that the hate speech laws, also known as the censorship laws, are actually just blasphemy laws. Because one of the first acts that's been done by the Minister for the Minister for Home Affairs, Tony Burke, is that he's prevented a criticism of Islam from entering Australia by cancelling their visa. So apparently the first use of the anti-Semitism laws is going to be to protect Islam, which might be what they call an unintended consequence.
Interesting.
Now, what was hateful about what Sami Mahmoud said, Yahud said, this is the Jewish influencer who's been banned from entering Australia. Well, apparently in the past, he said that Islam is a murderous ideology and said that Islam cannot be trusted to coexist. So that's an example of what his views are. Now, clearly, truth is not going to be a defence to the blasphemy laws, because I've shown you this slide before. So here's any number of examples where the Islamic instruction manual, the Quran, says exactly that. Do not take the unbelievers as allies or friends. Well, Yahud said you can't trust Islam to coexist. And there's also quite a few passages about punishing with death or fighting the unbelievers. So I think the defense of truth would simply be to quote from the instruction manual. And wasn't that supposed to be a carve out for the hate speech laws? Aren't you supposed to be allowed to quote directly from such instruction manuals, the Quran, the Bible? Well, you might be able to quote from it, but you're still not going to get your visa apparently, because that's It's hate speech. Hate speech
Yes.
for a Jew to criticise Islam is unacceptable.
Mm. Yes, very interesting. Very interesting they do that, isn't it? It's very interesting. Yes. Very
I
interesting
wonder how
take.
many hate preachers from mosques in Western Sydney have been deported since Bondi.
Yes, not many, I assume, mate. Not many.
All righties. Okay, another update. So, update on last year's, so this is about 6 or 7 months ago. Remember the totally successful, big, beautiful, magnificent strike on Israel's nuclear facilities, which obliterated them?
Mm-hmm.
And you remember at the time I said, I don't believe it. I don't think the physics of what they claim to have done with their bombs dropping down ventilation shafts and then another bomb follow. I said, I don't believe that. I think that's BS. I think what we had there was a agreement between Iran and the US. So the US said to Iran, we're going to bomb your nuclear facility and you're going to say it was destroyed. Now, in return, we get to claim a victory because we bombed it, and you get to keep it because bombing it won't destroy it. And I think both parties agreed to that, because I certainly don't think the US could have carried out what they claimed to have carried out. I don't believe it would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of goes along with that, because that was, 6 or 7 months ago when they obliterated it. Well, now the US is back in the Persian Gulf with another carrier strike group and threatening Iran that there'll be more strikes unless Iran makes a deal about nuclear weapons.
Okay.
So what's the deal required? Didn't they obliterate those things half a year ago?
What is going on
there? The Iranians must have been pretty quick diggers to dig it all out again. Or maybe what we speculated on, that it was all theatre last time. And it may be all theatre this time. And I don't want to speak much to this, but Iran is a large, intelligent, powerful, technological country that sits in difficult mountainous terrain, adjacent, probably the most strategically important waterway in the world. And for the US to send one carrier over there and drop a few bombs on them can do nothing but scratch the surface. If I were Iranian and the US did this, and it wasn't one of those sort of theatre jobs where you'll do this and I'll do that, assuming it was a real strike aiming to damage Iran, all Iran's got to do is shut the Strait of Hormuz. And they've got a large coastline right on it. They don't need to engage the US Navy to do that. They can fire mines from artillery. They can drop mines from missiles or aircraft or small speedboats at night. So they could very easily mine the Gulf. And if you mine the Gulf, doesn't matter whether you're hitting tankers or not, very quickly tanker traffic's going to stop. And you might remember that happened in the next strategic waterway over the Bab al-Mandab, when the Houthis started firing missiles and struck a few cargo ships and effectively stopped all transit through the Bab al-Mandab. The same thing would happen here. If the Iranians, even if they started firing the odd missile at cargo ships, the traffic's going to stop. The insurance would be too high. And given the confined nature of the waters, the US can't go in there with minesweepers and sweep the mines because they're right next door to Iran, and they'll start losing ships. And they certainly can't put a carrier in there for the same reason. So their carriers are going to have to be the next country over, out in the Indian Ocean, which is going to limit their ability. So again, my expectation, this is all just theatre, and I don't think anything serious is likely to come from it, because the US can't win this. They can't gain from this.
No, but like you say, I tend to agree. A lot of this stuff is massively just about theatre and posturing and all those sorts of things. It's just,
Yep.
So get the power because they can.
Righto. Not easy being green.
Oh, no. Not easy being green. Come on, Kermie.
Not easy being green. Now, last week we had this record heat wave, you might remember, and it affected you in SA more than me in Victoria, but we both got temperatures well into the 40s. And so there was this story in the Adelaide Advertiser where this poor SA business owner was lamenting the loss of $7,000 in stock after power went out to her fridges. And power outages are more common in very hot weather for a number of reasons. One is that you get more demand on the system, so you get more failures, more potential for deliberate shutdowns, deliberate blackouts. Bushfires can certainly do it, and I spent 4 days at the Skipton fire south of us a week or two ago, and in the aftermath, there was a massive task force of power workers, like 50 or 100 trucks replacing hundreds of power poles and wires throughout that region. So fire itself can damage the infrastructure. So we now have an increasingly fragile infrastructure. And power outages, not only when it's heat, but at other times, are increasingly likely. You can't build a reliable system out of unreliable parts. That shouldn't need saying, should it?
Exactly right.
Business owners, whilst they can go in the newspapers and say, oh dear, I lost $7,000 worth of stock because the lights went out, they can't say they weren't warned. They've been warned multiple times, not only by history, starting with the 3-day state black that South Australia had, 8 or 10 years ago, when the whole state went black for 3 days. And they've even been warned just lately. And here's yet another warning from an expert, for what it's worth, that says Australia's electricity system faces inevitable significant outages during multi-city heat waves as renewables fail to, fail to meet the demand. So, you were warned. You were warned, and this is going to get worse. And in case you hadn't noticed, Australia is rapidly becoming a third world country. And I've previously listed the signs. So we've got a police force you can't trust. We've got a health system you can't trust. We've got politicians you can't trust. We've got courts you can't trust. And we've got a power system you can't trust. So we're ticking almost all of the we live in a third world country boxes. And so what do they do in third world countries? They have their own generators. They know that this is going to happen. And often they'll only get power for a few hours a day. And at the rest of the time, you're on their own. So business owners need to understand this rather than just grizzling to the newspapers when the inevitable happens. This is a risk. You can mitigate it either by insuring against it or by buying your own generator. That's what you need to do.
Yeah,
that's what you need to do.
Yep.
But a reminder, of course, that the whole global warming scam is BS. It's built on fraudulent science, models, adjusted data, and rewritten history. And our own ABC, the national most trusted broadcaster, is lying to us. And last week they told us that all-time records in Victoria had been broken, with 2 towns in northwestern Vic. I'm in central western Vic. That being Hopetown and how would you pronounce that word? Because as a South Australian moving to Vic, how would you pronounce that town with a W there?
I'd say Walpiup.
You're actually pretty close. Walpiup is what they say. And I'd like one of those Auslan sign language people to translate that for me. I want to see you do that. So it was reported that during our recent heat wave, both of these towns in northwestern Victoria achieved record high temperatures, 48.9 or 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, note that one of these two records was set at an airport, and that's significant because temperature records are often set at airports. Most of Victoria's previous all-time records have been set at airports. And airports are notoriously hot places because they've got hot jet exhausts, they've got vast expanses of concrete and asphalt and so forth. And if they have any trees or grass around them, it's very short because you don't want to attract birds and you don't want to, fly into the trees. So airports have particular characteristics that make them hot places. And typically over time, if you place a temperature measuring station at an airport, maybe 50 or 80 years ago, that was a grass strip. And then over the half century that's followed, they've concreted it in, it's got much bigger. And you probably still find that temperature measuring station now sitting in a sea of concrete and having jet aircraft fly over it. So that's one reason why you tend to get higher and higher records at airports. And it's why airports are not typical of the broader environment and cannot be used as indicative of climate change. They are special hot places and you can't do that.
Yep.
Nevertheless, like that, of the 5 all-time records there, 4 of them were set at airports. So watch for that.
Yeah, so covered in that documentary as Climate Change, the movie, covers a lot of that really, really well.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, and this is from Joe Nova's excellent blog, joenova.com, I think it's called. Joe Nova's got the receipts. So Joe Nova looked back in history and actually dug out the newspaper reports of previous all-time highs in Victoria. And here in 1932, so nearly a century ago, these reports say that it was hotter then. So this week we were told that the all-time record was 48.9 Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas this 1932 newspaper says that during that heat wave, it was 51.1 in Oyen and 50.6 in Mildura, both temperatures that are higher than that. And we only know this because these are hard physical records. The Bureau of Meteorology has been busily adjusting all the electronic records. So I guarantee if you looked at the BOMS records for those places and those times, they would have corrected those old numbers to be lower than that. And that's how they can now claim that, hey, we're all going to die. We've just reached an all-time high. But physical records say that you haven't. So
no, exactly right.
Be skeptical of anything that meets the modern we're all getting hotter and hotter narrative, and be skeptical of adjusted historical records because, pro tip, they never adjust them up. They adjust them down. Yeah,
exactly right. And I did the same. I shared during the week, same thing, because I come across a newspaper article. They said 1896, a heat wave starts in far western New South Wales, causing 47 deaths in Bourke alone. Temperatures at Bourke are above 45 degrees for 13 days in a row. And I shared a couple of links, and I'm not sure if that's where Nova got her details from. I'm just going to share this just quickly. Won't be a sec. So this was from, it's called Trove. So heat and storms at Bourke and adjoining colony of New South Wales. The heat has been far worse than Victoria. From the back parts of residents have been forced to flee in scores. So, so if you go further, the thermometer registered 120 degrees today, and it's Fahrenheit, I'd imagine. And in many shops and houses, the temperature reached 125 degrees. So this is, this is on Trove, and again, I did some digging because of that newspaper article and did a bit of research on it and that as well. So, yeah, there's it's all in history. It's all there, and they just kind of continue on a grift and try and keep fear mongering and scaring people.
And by the way, even if you go back to 1932, when it was hotter, you'll find that atmospheric CO2 was much lower than it is now. So CO2 record in 1932 was 308 parts per million. It's now 430, and our wise rulers are telling us if it gets to 450, we're all dead. So in 1932, when it was 40% lower, what was the cause of the record temperatures then?
True. Well, good question.
Right. So a reminder, if you are unaware, governments, and I include government agencies like the Reserve Bank. Yes, it is a government agency. I know it's independent. The Bureau of Meteorology, the ABC, they all read the government script and they lie about everything all the time. And we've just shown you an example of that.
Grifters. Grifters for the government.
Now, here's one of the biggest problems with the whole CO2 will kill us narrative. They're telling us that if we get to 450, we're all dead because we'll get runaway temperature rise and there'll be a tipping point that we can't get back from. Now, the problem with that claim is that it's been much higher in the past. This graph saying that it was 1600, 50 odd million years ago. And Ian Plimer says that the CO2 levels were 8,000 back in the dinosaur days, which partly explains, if you believe it, why foliage was so abundant and then rotted down and turned into coal in swamps, because the plants loved it. CO2 is plant food. So how is it that we didn't get runaway climate change, runaway heating 50 million years ago when CO2 levels were like 4 or 5 times what they are now, and yet we're going to get it now if we get to 450? How do we survive 1600 or 8,000 if 450 is the drop dead limit now?
Yep.
That's the problem.
Well, it goes to show, like even some of those where the ice is receding in some of those high altitude locations, they're finding massive tree stumps and trees buried underneath that ice. So clearly, that was ice free at some stage and thriving with greenery.
And to even know that, you have to read history because the government won't tell you that.
No, of course not.
But here's the reason for the lack of runaway temperatures when we get to 450 or even 1600 or even 8,000. How come we didn't get runaway, unstoppable heating then? Well, this explains it. So you have to understand what the greenhouse theory is. So the greenhouse theory says that CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere allows the sunlight to pass through it, but when it hits the Earth and turns into infrared radiation rather than visible light, it stops it escaping again. So CO2 forms a blanket, the light gets through it, turns into infrared and then bounces off it. That's the greenhouse theory in a nutshell. And this is all true. CO2 is a greenhouse gas, and it does do that. It does restrict the escape of infrared heat back into space. But here's the reason why the current scare is bogus. It's because the effect saturates. Most of the absorbing or reflective effect of CO2 happens at very low levels. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 parts per million. Remember, we're up in the 400s. And it saturates, so most of the effect has already happened. And even if you significantly increase CO2 from now, you get very little extra warming effect. Now, the IPCC knows that, and our governments know that. And they ignore it and lie about it. And here's what Australian climate skeptic Peter Clack said to explain that. So the 40-year climate campaign ignores a fundamental principle of physics, the law of diminishing returns. Rising CO2 levels do not cause temperature to increase at a linear rate. Think of painting a glass window to block out the sun. The first coat blocks the majority of the light. The second blocks a bit more, but by the 10th coat, you're painting a wall that is already black. The marginal change in temperature is now almost zero.
Yep.
So, yeah, you've got almost all of the effect already, and it doesn't matter if you add more CO2 to it because you've already got pretty much all you're going to get. You know, if you put a hat on and go out into the sun, you've got pretty much all the shade you're going to get. If you put another hat on, you might get a tiny bit more, but if you put 10 hats on, you're basically indistinguishable from 1/2. This is the argument for the saturation of the CO2 warming effect. And remember, in this analogy, 20 to 50 parts per million is the equivalent of your first hat. Your second hat's up to 100, your third hat's 150. By the time you get up to the 400s where we are now, you're putting your 5th, 8th, 10th hat on, and pretty much all the effect you're going to get, you've already got.
Yeah.
That's a great example. The IPCC knows this. Your governments know this. They lie about it. And when you get physicists pointing it out, they get suppressed or ignored. This is physics.
Yep.
You can't argue with physics.
Yep, exactly right. Yep.
All right. What else have we got?
And if people, I have had a discussion with, believe it or not, an architect, Bruce, that's been researching this because he started researching this because of building codes and all that sort of stuff over 20 plus years ago. David Denham, and I've got an interview with him on YouTube, and he's pretty much explained exactly what you did in a lot of detail, and basically, you know, calling out the ICC and all the others for all their BS reporting.
Yep. And pickle mix beautiful sounds like the mask theory.
Yeah, exactly right.
Except for the fact that masks didn't work anyway, so leaving that one aside. Yep, okay. All right. Kicking on into health, and there's a little bit of health this week, but not too much. So we had this story in the Adelaide Advertiser telling us that childhood leukemias are up 30% in 2 decades. And apparently childhood leukemia is the #1 lethal threat to children from disease, from cancer. So interesting question, why has it gone up at all? And why has it gone up recently? And I've said before that I regard all cancers as immune failures. One of the functions of your immune system is to detect cancerous cells and kill them so they don't grow and cause disease. So anytime you get a disease, it's because your immune system has already failed once. And that's why it's so hard to then treat, because the only reason it's there is because it's evaded your immune system. And it's also why cancers often come back even after chemotherapy, because there is selective pressure on that cancer all the time. So if you got, pick a number, 1 billion cancer cells in your body, and you poison them with chemotherapy, you kill all the ones that are susceptible, but there's probably some cancer cells in that mix that are resistant. So you just kill all the others, and then the resistant ones can grow and spread later on. So I think that's a major reason why cancers can recover after cure, or they call it relapse. I think part of the trouble is the treatment itself is selecting for resistant cancer cells. Now, having said that, I believe cancers reflect immune failure, this point from Peter McCullough was interesting. So the COVID experience showed us that the COVID shots could be immune suppressant. And that was reflected in the fact that you're more likely to get COVID after you'd had multiple shots, and you're actually more likely to get cancer after you'd had multiple shots. And this story from McCullough's site talks about turbo cancer and the change in the pattern. And it says, it was announced that the colon cancer has surpassed malignancies of the breast as the leading cause of cancer driven by cases before age 50. So colon cancer is now the commonest cancer in young people. And we've seen that. You know, when I was a doctor, if you would hardly ever see a colon cancer in someone who was under 60 or 70. Now we're hearing about 25-year-olds being diagnosed with disseminated colon cancer. Something's gone wrong. Something's changed. And it says this epidemiological shift started in 2021. What else happened in 2021, Mark?
I don't know. I think, you know, people going on holidays or something. Bruce, was it climate change? Was it where the temperature changes?
The coffee got hotter, I think.
Too much Coke, maybe, yeah. Too much intimacy,
and it
maybe.
Says this coincided with the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines, which were mandated for a large part of the workforce, especially younger people. So, yeah, if it's right that cancer is an immune failure, and we know that the COVID, little Freudian slip there, I was going to say the cancer shots, the COVID shots suppressed immunity and are now associated with higher cancer risk, it all makes sense. So looking back to these kids, if cancers are rising in kids, it says to me a couple of things. One is whatever the toxic environmental thing is that's causing it is getting more prevalent. I don't know what it is. Is it food? Is it pesticides? Is it EMF? Is it phones? Who knows? And the other thing is that people's immune systems are getting damaged and less capable of resisting it.
It's climate change, Bruce.
Coffee's too hot.
Mm-hmm.
Too much time on the screens. Too much blue screens.
Just before you get onto the money part there, mate, I just wanted to just share this because it's getting a little bit of it's making people's heads explode. Just see if I can bring it up. Hang on a second.
That was never our intent.
No. Well, I mean, it is, but people's heads just explode regardless. But anyway, this during the week, it's making people's heads explode. I put this up, just reminding people. And you know, like we're talking about One Nation, getting high in the polls, but this isn't just One Nation. This was, Alphabet United Voice Australia, or whatever it is, or whatever. It was Palmer's Party, I can't remember. But you had Alex Antic, you had others. This is a cross-party inquiry. This is the COVID inquiry, and it's all up on One Nation's, on Malcolm Roberts' website. All these videos, there's like three. They had 3 inquiries, and I put this up recently, and it's obviously because I've got a few more followers now on my. It's making people's heads explode. You should see the comments in this, and I've just put in there. It's all on the public record. So obviously the classic people saying, you know, you bloody tinfoil hatters, conspiracy theorists, and I just can't believe after 4 or 5 years these people still want to dig their heels in and absolutely refute all the evidence that's around us, the increase in deaths, mortality, increase in autoimmune diseases, including cancer, and they just want to continue to put their head in the sand. So it just amazes me. But anyway, I just wanted to remind people again, if you want to go onto Malcolm Roberts' website, there's like dozens and dozens of videos. It's all on the public record. These people, when the dam actually breaks, these people will have nowhere to go. But just wanted to share that. But the other thing I wanted to also replay about, because we're on the topic with that, is our good friend, and you appeared with our good friend on a podcast with Elizabeth. I'm just going to play this. This is and she's amazing. I love Elizabeth. She's just like a dog with a bone. But I'm just going to play this bit quickly.
If you're not vaccinated, it's going to be very, very hard to maintain a job, to be able to go anywhere. People having weddings are going to have to weed out the unvaccinated. The pubs and the clubs are going to have to, find out whether people are vaccinated before they allow them in. Otherwise, their businesses will go bankrupt.
That was a discussion that you and Elizabeth and I had. As a really, really great discussion. But Elizabeth, the way she is, has done a follow-up. She's actually reporting Dr. Christopher Perry now, and she's followed up with this. Now, Elizabeth is on Substack, and as much as, I appreciate the fact that she's still on there, I'm choosing not to, so I'm sharing this email that she sent through. But if people do want to go on to Elizabeth's Substack, they can. But she's for the attention of the Office of the Health Ombudsman in Queensland. This notification concerns a series of coercive, intimidating and misleading statements made publicly by Dr. Perry during the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, which appear inconsistent with the standards required under good medical practice, a code of conduct for doctors in Australia, the Australian Immunisation Handbook and Commonwealth Guidance, Operation COVID Shield on voluntary informed consent. And that's a full letter that she's written there. And look, Elizabeth's one of these people that she's got a lane, and she sticks to a lane, and she's like a dog with a bone, and she's really trying to hold these people to account. So if people aren't already following Elizabeth Hart, she is on Facebook, she is on X, but she's also still on Substack, and she's obviously got her website. But just love how she still holds these people to account, and we should continue to do that, because you and I and Elizabeth spoke about that in much detail. This whole thing about informed consent is a massive thing, and the coercion during that period of time, and we ought not let these people get away with what they did to the Australian public during that time.
Yep, absolute terrier. But sadly, as I've said, you now live in a third world country where you can't trust the courts, you can't trust government agencies, you can't trust government. So I don't expect that to go anywhere. I mean, Elizabeth is right. You've got that doctor giving health advice without taking history or examining any of the patients that he's talking to. So he was giving broad stream health advice to patients people that weren't his patients. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so that's unethical too, and I had the same thing when I gave vaccine exemptions. I gave them after I'd done a consult and discussed pros, cons and so forth with the person concerned. And Nicholas Spurrier, then the South Australian Chief Health Officer, just binned them. Now, again, that's grossly unethical. She hadn't seen those people as patients. She hadn't taken a history. She hadn't examined them. She hadn't explained pros and cons, all things that I'd done. So she took it on herself to unilaterally cancel the therapeutic interaction that occurred between me and a patient, and without having them as a patient, doing something else. Grossly unethical as well.
Yep, 100%. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I'll keep calling them out for it.
Now, money and finance, we should just skip over that because there's a bit of a glitch in the financials this week.
Right. So I don't know whether you cover that.
Massive corrections in the precious metals, with gold down 3%, more than that at one point, and silver down 19%, and it'll be down another, I'm guessing, 5 or 8% since then. So massive falls in silver. And in fact, it's a catastrophe for silver, because silver's basically back to the price it was at Christmas. That's how fast it had run up. We lost a month. And Bitcoin continues to bleed. So I'm not fussed by this. Nothing fundamental has changed in any of those things, Bitcoin or precious metals. And I regard the current smashy with the prices as nothing more than the big boys doing financial engineering to smash prices down. Just talking about silver, it remains a strategic metal. It remains in short supply. It remains difficult to increase the supply of, and it remains critical for solar panels, cars, batteries, missiles. None of those things have changed since Friday. Only thing that's changed is the big boys have played their financial games and smashed it down. And they've been doing that for decades. So they've done it again a little bit. Philip says it was done so they could buy in. Well, there's two things there. One is they're probably sitting on a lot of what are called shorts. So they'd bet that the price of silver will be down at the end of the month. Well, guess when the end of the month was? The last trading day was Friday, and that's when all of this happened. But they've been doing that for decades. So again, I would just sit tight. I don't regard any of this as real. I regard it as financial engineering. And unless you believe that governments are going to stop overspending money and that the 90% of the cattle class that we call fellow citizens in this country, unless you believe that they're going to stop holding their hands out for free government stuff, the government's just going to keep printing, which means that hard assets of whatever type, precious metals, Bitcoin, whatever, must go up. So short-term noise should mean nothing. And I had a great GIF on the phone, which I can't show you here, but it was Roy Rogers with a hi-ho silver rearing, and the comment was, "Don't get bucked off." So, don't get bucked off the silver train at the moment. That's my that's my approach to it.
Yeah. No, that's right. It's a long game, isn't it?
And evidence that it was all just financial manipulation came from this, because a few days before that, they were trying to smash the price down anyway, probably looking at that end of the month price setting date. And so an expert had said that it was a guarantee that silver would plunge 50% in the next year. Well, it did it in the next week. So was that just plucked out of somebody's ear? No. So they were deliberately trying to make people fragile. And I would remind you that wild price springs in the price of the precious metals were experienced during the Weimar hyperinflation, and averaged over the whole lot, there were massive gains. So the price of gold in German marks could fall 50% in a day at times during that 10-year period. All while the price of gold rose from 170 marks per ounce to 87 trillion marks per ounce.
Wow.
So wild swings are characteristic of hyperinflations, and I can't believe we haven't got hyperinflation already. The world economy is bust. We've got promises we can't meet. We've got printing of money out of thin air, and we've got the big boys in finance manipulating prices up and down at a whim. So I think it's inevitable. I think this is late stage failure of the financial system, which happens with all fiat currencies, by the way. Typical life of a fiat currency is 30, 40, 50 years. Arguably, we've been going since 71. So what's that, 55 years? So we are desperately overdue for a collapse of the current dollar system. And I'm surprised it hasn't happened already.
Yes, very interesting. Yes, our mate, Mr. Maloney.
And can I say to anybody who hasn't seen it, if you don't do anything else in terms of self-education about money and why the current system is broken and will fail, have a look at Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money series. You can search that on YouTube. I'm watching it again at the moment. It's that good. It just explains how money works, what it is, and why the current fiat, unbacked by anything money, is overdue for a collapse. So highly recommend that above everything else you look at over. It's great.
It's a great series, absolutely. For simpleton like me can grasp it, and I really enjoyed it. It was good, and it's probably due for me to rewatch it again as well, because it is pretty just laid out very simply, understandable. It's layperson's, presented in layperson form. So yeah, definitely recommend it as well.
Yep.
Hidden Secrets of Money.
All right. Now, here's an example of how clueless our wise rulers are with their government-managed money. So nobody would doubt at the moment that cost of living pressures are very severe on the average person. Housing costs are very high. Government costs are very high. And inflation is ticking up. Now, I said that our wise rulers who manage our money are clueless, and here's an example. So this story says that the RBA, which is going to meet tomorrow, is looking to raise rates as inflation spikes to 3.7%. Now, first off, anybody who understands money who thinks inflation is 3.7% is not paying attention. We've discussed numerous examples that suggest it's pretty close to 10% and has been for decades. Now, the second thing is that our wise managers think that they can address cost of living pressures by raising interest rates. So explain to me how making my mortgage more expensive by raising the interest rate is going to help me with price stress from bills. And it's significant. Apparently what's looked at is, I think, a rise from 3.6 to 3.85% as the likely result. And that's going to add $120 a month to a typical $600,000 mortgage. So our wise money managers and rulers think that they can help us with rising costs by making our mortgages $120 more expensive a month. Stop helping.
Yes.
Please stop helping.
Get out of our life.
Please stop helping.
Yep.
And a reminder, governments like high inflation. Governments create inflation, as Milton Friedman showed, and they like high inflation. And they like high inflation not only because the cause, money printing, gives them money to spend, they also like it because it devalues the dollar, which means as prices go up, wages tend to follow. And as your wage goes up, you get pushed into higher and higher tax brackets, so the government gets to skim even more money out of your pay packet each week. So governments like inflation. Governments cause inflation, and they have no interest in addressing it because it helps them. All they can do is lie about it, which is what they do. They tell you the rate's much lower than it really is, and then they lie about the causes.
Yep. Sounds about right.
I mentioned governments lie all the time about everything.
Yeah, just once or twice.
I hope that's not hate speech.
Well, I'll turn it into it. They'll make a reason for it.
All right. Now, in a blow to the diversity is strength people, this article appeared in the American Thinker online magazine during the week, and it laid out the opposite view. It says that diversity is not helpful. And here are some excerpts from the article. The Western liberal mind has convinced itself that to be decent and humane, society must engage in diversity. True, diversity of opinions is creative and constructive. We're not allowed to have that, remember. Can't have diversity of opinions, they'll be squashed. Reference COVID. There is, however, another form of diversity that has been disastrous for native European populations. Perhaps the best example of this is the case of Sweden. In the 1950s, Sweden was largely a homogeneous and cohesive society. It was known for its low crime rates and high trust, where people left homes unlocked and bicycle theft was minimal. You could cross it out and put Australia in there in the 50s, couldn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Today, after importing hundreds of thousands of migrants from the Middle East and Africa, it has become the rape capital of Europe.
Just freaking tragic.
Sweden's socialist governments cared more about diversity and multiculturalism and appearing humanitarian than about maintaining the cosy, crime-free society where, for instance, women could walk alone after midnight. They opened their gates to multitudes of people, primarily from Muslim countries, Afghanistan, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Morocco, Pakistan, Syria, and sub-Saharan Africa. Countries whose Islamic culture is not liberal and certainly not progressive. Women in these societies are not much more than chattels. A note, especially this segment, which I agree with, and I think you do as well. When speaking of homogeneity, the intent is not in reference to race, religion, or ethnicity, but rather cultural homogeneity. When members of society accept the same moral codes and live in accordance with them, their skin colour or religious preference does not matter. However, the elites of Western European states have blindly imported hordes of migrants whose moral codes and behaviour differ vastly from the established population.
Right, absolutely.
I agree with that. You know, we've said many times, I don't care your ethnicity, I don't care your race, I don't care your skin colour, I care what your values are. And if your values are traditional Australian values, welcome aboard. But if you come from a society which has vastly different cultural values, I don't think we can integrate you into Australia.
No, this is exactly right.
And in another example of diversity making us safer, this Bondi shooting victim says that the hospital changed her name and religious designation whilst she was in hospital to keep the media away. But was it really about the media? The patient doesn't think so. All right, let's see if I can share screen without buggering it up.
Without dropping yourself off.
Cooperation, some administration staff came and she said, we have to change your name. And I said, why? And she said, to keep media from you. And they cut my band and they put me new band with Karen John without any religious. I was so scared and so upset. I went not long ago through the shooting, and hardly we all been in life. And I start to remember not long ago the two people from Bankstown Hospital. They openly treating to kill Jews when they will come to a hospital. So I was so scared. My husband and my family never left my side. So they took me to the operating theater. I had operation. And when I come back, I was thinking I have to be discharged very quick because I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. I cry all the time. I was scared.
And what do you think the motivation was? Like, do you believe the woman has said it was about media, or did it? And did she ask you permission, or she?
No.
She okay, did. So what are your fears in relation to that?
Well, in my opinion, they was afraid of staff, not media.
Attack.
They can't trust their own staff.
Wow, man, that's just absolutely crazy.
Well, that's what the person concerned said. She doesn't believe that was done to keep the media away. She believes that was done to keep the staff from harming her. And she mentioned the example that we mentioned, you know, the recent two nurses in Western Sydney Hospital who said exactly that. If Jews come in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we played that. Seems to have gone awfully quiet what ended up happening to those two, yeah?
Yes, I haven't heard anything myself.
That's
so
very interesting.
The patient there says she doesn't believe they needed to do that to keep the media away. And certainly the other hospital didn't seem to think it was necessary to change Ahmed's name to keep the media away from him. And in fact, the media was welcomed in that case. So that reinforces to me the suggestion that, no, this was not about safety from the media. This was about safety from certain members of staff. Certainly that's what the patient said.
Wow.
And on that topic, how come Ahmed wasn't Australian of the Year?
Yeah, fair call.
Surely they could have had a special committee and rushed that one through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, very cool.
All right. So more diversity is strength. And you might remember a week or two ago, South Australian Premier Malinauskas basically saying the best thing about multiculturalism is the food. You know, without it, we'd have one sort of food and it'd be boring. Well, this example from Italy sort of flies in the face of that, because apparently in Italy, a certain group of new Italians wants to restrict your food choices. They don't want to add to them with the culinary delights of their home society. They want to replace your delicious bacon and prosciutto with falafel. So, oops, Mally, I don't see that multiculturalism is improving the choice of foods in Italy. It appears to be threatening the choice. And mind you, that was a plastic pig.
Yeah. Oh, really? How can a plastic pig be unclean, Bruce?
I haven't read the book. Well, I have read the book.
Yeah,
Good
you have
question.
read the book.
Good
You'll have to go back and peruse that, Bruce. And
Damn, I have
see
to look at it.
how can a plastic pig be unclean? That's really
Yes.
interesting.
Okay. Final segment, Mythbusters, official stories questioned. And this is a story from the Advertiser this week, and it was a prompt for me to bring out a segment which I've had in the stack for quite a while. And this is the return of the old get out of the sun or die of cancer story. So here in the Advertiser, apparently they're looking at putting dedicated time in the school day where the students can put sunblock on, make sure that they're not distracted by anything else. So the premise here is that you've got to stay out of the sun or you'll get cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Now that conflicts with the other general premise, which is that vitamin D is vital for immunity and preventing cancer. So there seems to be already just a little question over which side of that, where the balance is going to fall on this. And most of what I'm going to present here, I'm taking from a Midwestern doctor's excellent blog. And if you want to find this, if you Google basically what I've written there in yellow, a Midwestern doctor, the forgotten side of medicine, dermatology's disastrous war of the sun, on the sun. If you type that in, you probably find his Substack posting from 2024 fairly easily. Okay. So here's how the Midwestern doctor opens. He says, skin cancers are by far the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the United States. So to prevent them, the public is constantly told to avoid the sun. However, while the relatively benign skin cancers are caused by sun exposure, the ones responsible for most skin cancer deaths are due to a lack of sunlight. So there you go. And I point out here, this might be another example of the old vaccine save lives story. If all we're doing is looking at, does your melanoma risk go down? Or does your skin cancer risk go down if you stay out of the sun? If that's the only question you're answering and you're only looking at the sun-related cancers, then the answer is probably yes. But if you zoom out and go, okay, not just do you die of basal cell carcinoma if you get in the sun, what about do you die of breast cancer, prostate cancer, any other cancer if you have more or less time in the sun? So like the vaccines, they only narrow down on, okay, does this prevent the measles? And they never test, yeah, it does, but it gives you meningitis, asthma, food allergies, and autism, because they're not looking at those things. So there seems to be a parallel here. So to start just with a little bit of physics review, the visible light that we see around us when we go outside is only a very narrow part of the, call it the light spectrum, the radiation that's coming off the sun. Higher in frequency than visible light, we've got ultraviolet X-rays. And lower in it, we've got infrared grading down into microwaves and radio waves. So there's a whole heap of radiation that comes off the sun, and the visible light that we see is only a very small part of that spectrum. Now, all of the radiation that comes off the sun has an effect on human health. So the UV does, the infrared does, even the visible light does. And I'm going to address visible light and infrared later. But for today, we're only going to look at ultraviolet, because the claim from the Stay Out of the Sun people is that the UV light from the sun causes cancer. That's their claim. That's why you've got to stay out of the sun and cover up. So again, from that blog, let's just do a quick review of cancers. So the commonest skin cancer is the BCC, the basal cell cancer, and it's responsible for 80% of skin cancers. These grow slowly, they don't spread, and they're very treatable. Unless you leave that until it's the size of half your face, then excising it should be fairly simple and definitive. And BCCs are related to the sun. So that's true. More time in the sun will likely give you a higher risk of this rather benign cancer. Now, the second most skin cancer is the squamous cell cancer, the SCC, and it's about 20%, maybe a bit less. And again, it tends not to spread, maybe about 5% spread. Most don't. And because of this, this is generally pretty easy to treat as well. And these are the sorts of things that GPs are forever burning off, freezing off, all the plastic surgeons are cutting out. And these are also sun-related. So the majority of skin cancers are sun-related, but they're generally mild and easy to treat. Now, the third category is the melanoma, and it's rare amongst skin cancers. It's only responsible for about 1%, and these are nasty. They spread early, and in fact, often by the time you find the first one, it's already spread. And these can kill you because they spread. Now, the interesting thing is melanomas are not sun-related. So of the 3 skin cancers that are out there, this is the one that sun exposure does not appear to be relevant to. And this is the important one. So how do we know that BCCs and SCCs are sun-related? Well, the biggest clue is that you get them in skin that's sun exposed, typically on your face or your forearms. And the skin where you get them is often damaged by the sun. You can see chronic sun damage. You know, there's old people with a scaly skin and the ulcers and so forth. So there's little doubt that SCCs and BCCs are sun-related. And it's one reason, for example, why professional cricketers often suffer a lot from these. So this story says that Michael Clark's had 6 of them cut off. And I remember seeing Greg Chappell and Alan Border, you know, in their 60s. Their faces look dreadful. They've had a lot of sun exposure and sun damage. So no doubt about it, sunlight does cause BCCs and SCCs, but these are generally easy to treat, particularly if you treat them early. Now, in contrast, the dangerous skin cancer, the melanoma, appears not to be caused by sunlight. So to read, when comparisons are made of cutaneous melanoma with cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma and basal cell cancer of the skin with respect to age dependence, sex ratio, distribution on the body, association with sun exposure, and variation with latitude, it is clear that SCC is due almost entirely to sun exposure, that BCC is partly due to sun exposure, and that melanoma is not due to sun exposure. So they scare us with the melanoma story. And I do remember a politician recently saying, oh, you know, well, I had a melanoma. Thank God they caught it early. You've got to stay out of the sun. Well, this scientific paper says that sun is not a risk factor for melanoma. So staying out of the sun does not protect you from the only dangerous skin cancer. So that's different to what they tell us, because the whole premise of the slip, slap campaigns is that if you go out in the sun, you're going to get skin cancer. And if you stay out of it, you're not. But it appears that the slip, slop campaign has no effect on the only cancer, that skin cancer is actually dangerous, and that's melanoma. So again, that distinction is never made in the ads. We are just told you've got to stay out of the sun because you'll get cancer instantly and die. And whilst UV exposure does seem to be a risk factor for SCCs and BCCs, there's good things about UV on your skin as well. And the biggest one that we learnt during COVID was the benefit of vitamin D. Now, vitamin D shouldn't be called a vitamin. It's not a vitamin. It's a complex hormone that affects your immune system critically. It's also related to mental health and bones, but it's critically important for immune function. And we noticed that during COVID. Your risk of dying of COVID was almost inversely related to your vitamin D level. So the lower your vitamin D, the more your risk of dying from COVID. And isn't it interesting, just as an aside, I've noted that vitamin D is a building block for testosterone. Isn't it interesting that all of these public health campaigns that our wise rulers foist on us all coincidentally lower testosterone? And I make the point, farmers like doing that. They castrate all their male animals because they're more difficult to manage if they have testosterone. So I've just listed a few things there, few common sense public health campaigns which lower your T. So statins do. Statins mess up cholesterol. Cholesterol's a building block. Eating soy foods actually puts estrogens into you. Avoiding the sun, vitamin D is a building block. And even artificial light. So blue lights not only affect your day-night cycles, but blue lights reduce testosterone. And you might remember that Australia was the first country in the world to do away with the incandescent lamp, which is a yellow, orange, red, and replace it with blue lights by mandate. So 20 years ago, Malcolm Turnbull banned the incandescent bulb. Wish I'd had the sense to go out and buy 100 of them. And he mandated compact fluorescents, which have now turned into LEDs, both of which mainly put off blue light. And I'll cover that when I talk about day-night cycles and sleep. But just getting blue light is really bad for your natural cycles. So isn't it interesting that everything that our wise rulers are pushing at us is not only bad for us, it's particularly bad for men and testosterone.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like it's designed, Bruce. It's like you say, you use that analogy about, castrating the bulls, and this is you don't want men with high testosterone in populations that you want to control. Hey, Bruce.
No, they're way too much trouble. They keep jumping out.
Yeah, they keep challenging the tyrants.
They keep testing the fences.
That's it. Absolutely.
Okay, and as an example of the beneficial effects of vitamin D on the immune system, it was shown that virtually all the COVID deaths occurred in people who had very low vitamin D levels. And the suggestion was made that if instead of pushing COVID shots, which were negative effectiveness, if we'd instead told people to go outside and or take vitamin D tablets, we would have come through the pandemic much better. But instead, what did our wise rulers do? They arrested people who were out in the sun and no risk to anybody. This guy sitting alone on his deck chair on the beach is a zero risk of spreading COVID unless you're like these coppers and you come up to him.
Yep.
But our wise rulers criminalised all that. And
yes,
vitamin D is vital for immune health, and it's not just important for infections. As I already said, the immune system is also vital for cancer response. And this 2009 study showed that a modest rise in vitamin D could halve breast cancer and prostate cancer rates. Halve it. Let me read that. It's projected that raising the minimum year-round serum 25-hydroxyvitamin D to 40 to 60 would prevent approximately 58,000 new cases of breast cancer and 49,000 new cases of colorectal cancer each year. So simple things like telling people, no, go out in the sun. Don't get burnt. Don't cook yourself. Have graduated exposure, but get some sun time every day. Not only would it stop grandma dying of COVID, it would stop young people dying of colon cancer.
Yeah.
And same thing in this study, which said that rather like the VAX studies, even if the treatment intervention does prevent one disease, skin cancer, benign skin cancer, the overall effect may be grossly negative because of all the other bad things that happened. So this 2016 study from Sweden showed that there was an overall 50% higher death rate in a sun avoidant group and a 30% lower death rate in a sun loving group. So even if you get skin cancer from being in the sun, you don't get breast, bowel, prostate cancer. That's the implication of this. So just by focusing on one disease, you get a far bigger negative health effect. Now, I've known about vitamin D for a while, and as a result, I not only try and get some sun time each day, 5-10 minutes is fine. In winter, perhaps more. And I also take a lot of vitamin D. And we discussed this a few weeks back, where the UK health authorities went, oops, remember when you were telling you should be taking 600 or 800 units of vitamin D a day? We dropped to 0. You really should be taking 10,000. Oops, could happen to anybody. We were telling we might as well tell you not to take it, right?
Yeah.
And I'd already worked out by experiment that I need 10,000 units daily to get a decent level. And what I regard as a decent level is 125 in the Australian units. So not only do the experts tell us your level 50, 60 is all right, which is grossly low, but they tell you you'll get there if you just take 600 units a day. Well, I aim for over 100, hopefully over 125. And to get there, I've got to take 10,000 units a day. And I get my own vitamin D levels checked in the depth of winter. And you can do that. If you go online in Australia, there are any number of pathology companies that you pay them a fee. They'll send you a request form. You go into the local path collection centre. They'll draw your blood and tell you what your vitamin D is. You can do it yourself. You don't have to argue with your GP. And in fact, you can do it for anything. You can do it for testosterone, PSA, whatever you think is important. You can just pay the path company and they'll send you the request form direct and you get the results direct. You don't need to fight with your GP over it.
SV40, Bruce?
I do not know if you can test for that.
But you're right. As a big shout out to John and Edna Tate. John, during when he found out about vitamin D, regularly went out in his backyards in his jocks with nothing but his jocks on and got his vitamin D that way. And I think Edna went on vitamin D supplements, and they both got their vitamin D count up to about 140, 150 or something. Yep. So, feel all the better for it.
Now, the caveat here is I don't know if vitamin D in a bottle is the same as vitamin D in a sun ray. And I haven't been able to find that out. So I would prefer to have the sun time as the cause of it. But I think if your level's low, and pretty much everybody in Australia will find they've got, if not low, then very low levels, partly because of this whole sun avoidance thing. And also partly because what they tell you is okay, 50, 60, 70, is not okay. You need to be twice that. So that's how I manage it.
Yep. And someone was saying up in the comments that apparently we absorb it through our eyes as well.
Just looking at that. That's not the one. We put that one up. Yeah, got it. Yeah, I was just looking at that, and I don't wear sunglasses and haven't for a long time. And I used to be quite, squinty in the sun. Now I have clear glasses, which may stop some ultraviolet, not a lot of it, but they'll stop some of it. And I wonder whether it's the whole consequence of me getting off the carbohydrates and onto a appropriate diet and spending more natural time in the sun. I wonder whether my eyes have adjusted to UV. And as I said, UV is beneficial. Yes, it might be a risk factor for benign cancers, but it's also critically important for many other health things, including stopping other cancers. Now, the optometrists would probably argue that pterygia and cataracts are related to UV. And I don't know the strength of the evidence there. Maybe it's no better than the evidence for slip, slop, slap. But even so, yes, the light that's going in through your eyes is critically important for health. Why shouldn't the ultraviolet end of that spectrum, why shouldn't that also be important? Maybe it is. Caveman did not have sunglasses.
That's right. And I did hear something that in the morning, like best time, like in first thing in the morning, if it's sunny out, is standing out in the morning sun rays, because apparently it also helps with your melatonin and that. And so melatonin kicks in or something like that in the morning, and then so you end up sleeping better of the evening, and it's that cycle of when the sun comes up and the sun goes down.
Correct. And I'm going to cover that more later once I've digested this book, Light Doctor, which talks about the visible spectrum of light and its health effects. And there's no doubt that your normal circadian, your day-night rhythm, is cued from the sun. So in the morning, the sun starts off low and orange, rapidly becomes blue and above you, and then late in the day when it drops down, it goes red and orange again. And if you're a caveman, you then sit around a fire with an orange light low in your visual field, and that sets your day-night clock. In the modern world, we get up, we flick a light on, the light is blue, thank you, Malcolm Turnbull, and it's directly above you. So it does not replicate you getting up with the sun and going out and watching the sunrise. So that's bad. Now, worse than that is a lot of people spend the majority of their time indoors in blue light. And whilst it looks bright, it's incredibly dim. If you've ever been outside in the sun, you walk into a building, you can't see anything because the intensity of the light's 1/100th of what it is outside. Now you adjust to it, but if you're sitting in a office that's lit by Malcolm Turnbull's LEDs and compact fluorescence 8 hours a day, you're getting very dim blue light above you. Whereas if you're out in nature, you're getting very bright blue light above you. Then you go home, the TV or your screen or the lights in your house, they're doing the same thing. They're giving you dim blue light above you, when in natural cycles you should have dim red to yellow light below you, like a campfire. And like I say, once I've finished digesting the Light Doctor book, I'm going to go into that because the visible light is very important to health. Today we've discussed ultraviolet, and infrared is very important for health too. And these are things that the modern world completely messes up. We don't have natural light above us. Even in terms of infrared, infrared is long wavelength. It penetrates into you. It's why if you go into a pub, even if it's warm, because the air's warm, if there's a fire on, a wood fire, people go and stand in front of it because it's a different sort of heat and it penetrates deeply. And that has important health benefits. And again, isn't it amazing how everything beneficial is being banned by our wise rulers? You can't have a wood fire, you can't have a radiator, you've got to have some sort of heat pump thing that makes the air warm. That's convective heat. It's not the same as radiation, which is what IR is. So,
Yep, absolutely. And then the Greens want to take away gas as well.
yep. Well, again, gas puts off infrared. They want to switch us all to electricity, and it's not electric radiators. Oh, you can't have that. You've got a heat pump thing that puts warm air out. It's not the same. It's not giving infrared. Infrared's important. And, of course, you get infrared if you go out and sit in the sun, but you better not do that because you'll die of cancer tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anyway, my general approach to life these days is, if it's not what happened in nature millennia ago, you better have a pretty good explanation for why what you're suggesting is better.
Especially if it's coming from the government.
Right up the very, very top of this, there was a comment about the Amish. And I remember, I'm looking for it. I remember there was here we go. There was a meme from one of the US sites, and it's got a picture of one of those little Amish buggies. And it says underneath it, the Amish, history's longest in the making FU to the modern world.
Yeah.
They were right.
To go to the Amish life, eh? Way to go to the Amish life.
Yeah, well, I think I'm from being, very technological, I'm way quickly coming around to their point. Really am.
Oh yeah. I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing.
Anyway, I reckon I've padded that enough and still failed to get to the 2-hour point. And I'm going to blame you for that because I always factor in, some 10 or 15 minutes worth of sleep time at the start of the show. And you've not
10 or 15 minutes.
10
or 15 minutes of waffle. 10 or 15 minutes of waffle. But I'm going to pat it out a bit.
Carla doesn't come till 15 minutes in.
No, because she knows that she's got to listen to me at the start. So a lot of people just don't jump on for the first 15, 20 minutes because or full on. But I did remember when you were talking about at the beginning the World Economic Forum and how they manipulate us and they try to shape this, the world. And if people don't by now realize that the UN, the World Economic Forum, and all these bodies, don't have a lot of influence over even our government and so forth, you've got your head in the sand. But I just wanted to remind people of this, Bruce, and this is you've probably seen it lots and lots of times, but I'm going to share it again. Here we go. Going to play this again, mate. Just here we go. Now, if you have a look at that, Bruce, that a lot of everything that you've seen there that flashed up on the screen, that video is quite a number of years old and it was removed from their site and it's still obviously around. If you look at what's happening today, everything that's going on and those predictions that they talked about, we are well and truly advancing into all these sorts of things. So if people don't think that the likes of the United Nations, the WEF and all these unelected bureaucrats don't have an impact on our life. This is that whole groupthink that's affecting our government, and that's why I'm liking to see political parties like One Nation and others starting to rise, because at the end of the day, it is the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, the two sides of the same coin, have been in bed for decades working with these international groupthink organisations, and everything that's happening in our world is a result of them. So I'm actually pleased to see the rise of parties like One Nation, and people might want to call them far right. They might say that they're not, there's some stuff that's gone on in the past that, whatever. I believe that parties like that, including, others, that are looking to push back on this whole international groupthink, and I think we need to support them as much as possible. Liberal Party, as far as I'm concerned, and people should get this by now, you're flogging a dead horse if you think that voting for the Liberal Party will change the trajectory of this country. They are as bad as Labor. They're infiltrated as bad as Labor. Labor is your socialist, communist. The Liberal Party is no different. They're all controlled. They're all manipulated by the same international cohort of people that have this groupthink going on. So, yes, I am too polite. Too cheeky. I know. I try to be a little bit polite. I'm careful with my words at times, and I don't go full bore. But anyway, but Bruce, you also did mention another thing, which was the hate crimes bill and the anti-Semitism bill. And I just wanted to play this other little clip from you. It's an excerpt. It's about 3 minutes from a 17-minute presentation. I'm not sure if you've heard of Professor Anne Twomey. She's a constitutional expert. I just wanted to play this little bit from her, which is a part of a 17-minute thing unpacking this. I'm just going to play this for people as well.
Now, even though these acts are defined as hate crimes, the new law says that no crime need actually have been committed. No one needs to have been convicted, and conduct can be a hate crime even if it happened in the past when it wasn't a crime. It's enough for the minister to be satisfied on reasonable grounds that the group is engaged in or been associated with conduct constituting a hate crime. This is because the underlying purpose of this law is to ban groups that have been very careful to obey the law. So the only way they can be caught is by banning them for things done in the past when it was perfectly lawful to do them. Now, it doesn't take much imagination to see why that approach creates a rather dangerous precedent. The new law leaves it up to the minister to decide what was done and by whom, whether they had the necessary intent, whether their conduct can be attributed to the group, whether any defences apply, and whether the conditions imposed by the law in the relevant jurisdiction, such as a state-based racial hatred law, have been met. Now, ordinarily, we leave these assessments to independent courts and judges to make. For example, should a minister be the one deciding whether a defence of acting in good faith should apply when the minister has a political interest in banning a particular group? While the minister is not making a decision that will convict anyone of an offence, only a court can do that, the minister is still making a very serious decision about banning a group which does have flow-on criminal consequences. People who continue to be members of the prohibited group or who direct its activities commit an offence with very heavy penalties. The other question I get asked is whether it's a hate crime under the new law to criticise the actions or policies of another country. Now, ordinarily, one would assume that such criticism, which is political communication, would not be regarded as inciting hatred against a group because of their race, colour, ethnic or national origin. And there's some legal precedent to support that view. But in recent times, contrary arguments have been made. In particular, it's commonly argued by Jewish groups that criticism of Israel or Zionism is a proxy for expressing hatred against Jewish people. It's unclear how this would be dealt with either by ministers or by courts if such a decision were challenged. While statements have been made by ministers that the law would not result in bans for groups that engage in criticism of a country or its government, these statements have been qualified, leaving the position unclear, not to mention the fact that those ministers may not necessarily be the ministers who are responsible in the future when such decisions are made. It remains to be seen how this will play out, given how vague and broad the terms of the legislation are. Now, you may also have noticed that I haven't engaged in arguments here about the constitutional validity of the law. And that's because these arguments do become very repetitive and quite tiresome. But depending on how the law operates in practice, there may be arguments made alleging breaches of the implied freedom of political communication, or arguments that executive power is being exercised to punish people in breach of the separation of powers.
So that's Professor, and you're right, Maddie. I mean, I haven't seen it. I've heard other people mention this, but I've found some of her reporting has been quite balanced. I haven't obviously followed her long enough to know that she's actually more in favour of government than the Constitution. But from what some of the videos I have seen her talk into some of these things, she's been quite balanced in her assessment of them.
Right. Let me take us out just by responding to a few of the points you made there. So firstly, you said that the Liberal and Labor are two cheeks of the same coin.
There you go. You like that?
Are you listening, Alex Antic? I said several years ago, you need to get out of the Liberal Party and go somewhere else. This is your perfect opportunity to be a One Nation senator for South Australia. The Liberals are going to disendorse you anyway. Next time your seat is up for grabs, they're not going to give you the ticket. We've seen this. Was it Malcolm Roberts or
Gerard Rennick?
Gerard Rennick. We've seen this. The freedom-minded senators don't get re-endorsed by the party, so they lose their seats. So hope you're listening, Alex Antic. Like to see you poured over to One Nation, and the sooner you do it, the better. And then you can establish your brand under that banner. Okay, what else have we got here? In the 2030 predictions, the first one is you will own nothing and be happy. Well, let's look at the you will own nothing bit. That's also known as communism. Very few people are happy under communism because whilst you won't own it, someone will. And that someone will be a very small, powerful oligarchy. So you won't own your house and your car and your body. The elites will. So no, that is not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. And by the way, I already own lots of stuff and I'm already very happy. So
yes, that's right.
You're going to struggle to offer me a better deal under your conditions.
Well, eat less meat. That's definitely going to be off the table, Bruce. Only in small portions.
They'll work out why carnivores have fangs if they try that.
Good luck with that, hey?
Regarding Professor Toomey, she made a couple of really important points here. There can be a crime without a victim.
Yep.
Nobody has to stick their hand up and say, I was offended by this. Some judge can say this could have caused offence. That's a bit like saying my driving could have caused an accident and then prosecuting me for an accident, which didn't happen.
It's worse than
like
that, though,
saying,
it doesn't even go to the judge. It's even worse than that, Bruce, because it doesn't even go to the judge. It'll be up to the minister and the Attorney General.
Yep. And the other thing is it can be retrospective. That is deeply iniquitous. We must never accept the fact that you can criminalise something in the past, because how can you follow the law if it doesn't exist at the time? And this is the reason why, people say to me, oh, look, if you're not doing anything wrong, what are you worried about? And I say, I don't know what's going to be wrong in the future. You say to the Jews in Berlin in 1930, or a better example, did you say to the Dutch Jews in the mid-30s, when they all ticked their census boxes for the Dutch government, including the religion, so that the Dutch government had this list of where all the Jews were and where they lived, did they know that the Nazis were going to march in 1940 and say, nice set of records you got there? And that's why 80% of the Dutch Jews were killed in the Holocaust, more than German or Polish. Highest percentage death rate of anybody, because they were good little citizens who didn't work out that in the future that could be used against them. And finally, this is all about hate groups. Are you and I a group between us? Is one of us a group, or does it have to be more than one, and is two enough?
Well, this is it. It's very subjective, isn't it? It's very broad, and this is what she was saying as well. Yeah.
That's another sign that you live in a third world country where the law is arbitrary and can be enforced or not enforced at the whim of the police. In other words, the police are corrupt. They can arrest you for something if they feel like it, or they can just ignore it if they feel like it.
Yep. Yeah, that's right, Jason. That's exactly right. Seatbelts never exist. We never had to wear seatbelts, like getting booked for not wearing a seatbelt for back when seatbelts didn't exist. Nice point. Exactly right.
That's right. And by the way, we already have some elements of that in Australian law, particularly with regard to traffic law. So they can fine you for parking your car in a parking spot for too long. So it's a 2 hour and you're still there 2.5 hours. And you can say, okay, who if this is a crime, who's the victim? Well, we don't know. It's the person who could have parked here. All right, who is it? Who is it? Name them. Yeah, well, it just could have happened. Same as I could murder somebody. I've got a knife in the kitchen. Yeah, could have, but I haven't. And by the way, in traffic law, they can make it a crime for which you can't defend yourself by proving you didn't do it. For example, if you get flashed by a speed camera in your car, they send you a ticket which alleges that you were the owner of the car that was photographed. Now, you can say to them, I can prove I did not drive that car. I was interstate at the time. I can prove I didn't commit the crime. They don't care, because they're not alleging that you committed the crime. They're alleging that you owned the car. So there are already some disturbing parallels. So, you can commit a crime for which not committing the crime is not a defence. And, let's think forward to the hate crimes thing and just see whether that, becomes a future problem.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, all they have to do is trawl through Rumble, and they'll see all of the stuff online. Yeah, see, I padded it out well, didn't I? Padded it out past the 2 hours. Look at me
Just
go.
about to say that. Well done, that man.
Hey, good on me. All right, anyway, good on you, brother. Thanks as usual for bringing everything. God bless Australia. We'll see you all next week, and Bruce will hopefully by then you'll have your Bible, mate, and be cracking right into it. Someone did make a note about you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with writing in it. Many of my friends write in it, but they also just suggested different colour sticky notes. There's little tabs and stuff like that in there as well. So,
never been a sticky note person, and never been one of those fluorescent overliners either. Hopefully there's quite a few pages front and back which are blank.
Yeah, there's not a lot of blank space in it. There's a lot of information there, mate. Your head will be well and truly absorbed in that book, brother. Well and truly absorbed. Anyway, guys, good on you. Thanks for all the comments. The smashing night again. Heaps of interaction, guys. Really appreciate it. God bless you, and have an amazing night. See you then, brother.
To fight again for that already burned, he was driven towards the flames. All the signs are there for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away. like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.